Hey all, it's me Amanda, and today I'm going to talk about the books that I read in February. I think I did pretty well in February, all things considered. I had a bit of a slump at one point, but I'll go ahead and get you some stats. I read 8 books. It was 2,123 pages and 19.27 hours of audio. It's only about 100 less pages, which considering that February is a short month, I think is pretty good. So my daughter's downstairs watching a cartoon. I've only got a limited amount of time, so let's see if I can just bang this out today. So the first book I finished was a book for the 12 challenge, 12 books recommended by family and friends. So the first one I read is The City in the Stars by Arthur C. Clarke, which is like I guess we'll call it a classic sci-fi novel. This was recommended by my friend Jack. So this one, I forget the main character's name, and I'm limited on time, so I'm not going to look it up right now. But basically, there's a guy who lives in this very like utopian city, but he and the people in the city have extremely long lives. They're basically immortal, like they live an extremely long time, and then they get reborn as well. But this guy is a brand new person. He was never reborn, and he is just so curious about the world. He's one of the only people who actually wants to leave the city. Like, nobody wants to leave the city. Like, in fact, they get nervous even thinking about the idea of anything outside of the city. That it's basically his journey eventually leaving the city and finding out more about what's going on in the world and even the galaxy at large. What was really interesting, this book is kind of like, I don't know how to describe it exactly, but it's very like peaceful. Like there's never any real conflict in this book. Like it's more that you're just being taken on a journey and finding out things. I really liked it. I thought it was really pleasant to read. I kind of liked having no real conflict and whatnot. Now, a lot of people might not like that, but for me, like I said, I found it really pleasant. I gave this 4 stars. I'd recommend it for someone who really likes sci-fi. And if you want something that's chill, I wouldn't call it like cozy, but it's very chill and more of it's like a thought, not a thought experiment, but it's more like thoughtful as opposed to there, like I said, there's no real conflict. There's nothing really stressful in this book, but I enjoyed it. It's kind of like one of those, I sometimes have these dreams where I'm just in a big house and I'm kind of walking around exploring. It's like that, except at a larger scale. The next book I read was a romance novel. I read Caught Up by Liz Tom Ford. Read this one on my Kindle. Now, this one is a baseball player romance. We have Kai and we have Miller. I believe her name's Miller. And this one, it's basically, she's his nanny. His son was left on his doorstep, and his son was like 6 months old, and the mother was like, peace. She had been like a one-night stand or something. And Kai, as a result, is responsible now for a young child, Max, and he needs a nanny. Miller is the daughter of his manager. I don't know. I can't remember exactly. Coach, something like that. Kind of a relationship. And it's an age gap, but it's pretty small. It's only like 7 or 8 years, I think. So it's like, okay. She's like a legit full-blown adult. She's like, at least, I think she's around 25. She's mid-20s. So it's not, like, it's advertised as an age gap, but it's not, you know what I mean? So anyway, basically it's fun-loving Miller versus very serious Kai, who used to not be serious, you know? Now, I enjoyed this book. I liked Liz Tom Ford. Her characters are very, there's a certain level of emotional maturity in these books, which I really appreciate. I didn't particularly love this one as much as the others, Mile High and The Right Move. I have no particular explanation. I just didn't feel the connection between the characters as much. Like, they do get to know each other, but I feel like in the other books, you can really, there's more actual talking dynamic, especially in The Right Move. where the characters really get to know each other, and I just didn't feel it as much in this particular book. I gave it 3.75 stars. It's not bad. I still recommend it, but I just didn't love it as much. Next, I listened to an audiobook. I listened to The Wager by David Grann. This is my first nonfiction book of the year. That's right, I'm actually reading nonfiction again. I decided to do it as an audiobook because I can have a hard time physically reading nonfiction. It slows me down, and if I get too slow, I just start to lose interest. So anyway, this book is the true story of The Wager, a ship that was in like a fleet of ships that was searching for a particular Spanish ship. It's an English ship, I should clarify. I think this was in the 1700s, so you get a lot of interesting information about ships back then. You get information about the route they go. They get shipwrecked, and they have to survive and figure out how to get back to England. And there's like mutiny and all kinds of stuff. There's a lot going on with this book. It was fascinating. I didn't like enjoy it because it's a downer. But you know, that's real life, right? So you have to expect that in nonfiction. But if you find any of that intriguing and you want to know more factoids and whatnot, I would recommend this book. I give it 4.25 stars. Next, I read The Foxwife by Youngsa Chu. Now this one, my book of the month, this one is really cool. So this one is a historical fantasy. So it takes place in the early 1900s, and it takes place in China, and some of it takes place in Japan, which is really great. It's so nice to like see a different time period and to see a different like area and culture. And basically, this is about foxes. And foxes, they look just like humans, but they can turn into actual literal foxes. And they have like a charm to them. They're very charming, very good looking, and they're able to like influence people as they want. And it centers primarily around a character named Snow. And there's also another point of view by a man named Bao. And Bao has the ability to tell if people are lying. So he becomes a private detective. Works really well together, you know. And Snow, meanwhile, is on a path for revenge. Someone murdered her daughter, and she's going to do something about it, okay? And the foxes, I believe, are also immortal in the sense that they don't age and die. It's like that, as opposed to like, you know, immortal, they can be killed, is what I'm trying to say. Anyway, I thought it was fascinating. You've got these different tales that interweave, and it's a slower paced book, but I didn't find it tedious. I still enjoyed it. I'm a person who likes a fast paced book. But I have to say, this is still extremely enjoyable. I highly recommend it. It was just overall really enjoyable. Like, I liked the characters. I liked finding more about the foxes, and there's a little mystery built in too. And I thought it was really interesting, and it was just nice to have a different kind of fantasy book. And I rated that 4.5 stars, which for me, that's a pretty big endorsement. Yeah. Next, I read Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. Now, Spinning Silver, she also wrote Uprooted, which is one of my favorite books. Now, Spinning Silver, this one is more of, has like a Russian feel to it because there's a Tsar involved. And basically we have a character named Miriam. Miriam is Jewish, and her family is they're money lenders, but her father hasn't been doing a very good job at actually getting any money, so they've been living in dire straits. And Miriam's finally like, I'm taking over. I'm tired of being hungry. I'm gonna take care of this. So she starts collecting debts, and she starts to kind of brag about how she can turn silver into gold. And then this gets the attention of this other race of magical people that live sort of amongst them. They're technically in a different world, but they can interact. The worlds can collide. And they're called like the Stariak. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that right, but we're going to say like Starik. And Starik. This gets the attention of the king of the Starik, which is not something that she really wants. They're very dangerous ice people. And then meanwhile, we've got other stories intertwined of a young noblewoman and also of a peasant girl. And the stories all later intertwine. Now, this is a fantastic book. I highly recommend. I give it 4.25 stars, which is on the lower side, considering I think this is a really great book. What's really funny, like, I feel weird, like, using this review as a comparison, but, like, basically, comparing this to Uprooted, I have the extremely unpopular opinion that I liked Uprooted more than this book, which is, again, extremely unpopular. And I can see why. I think this book is an overall better constructed book than Uprooted. There's more going on, there's more characters, there's more interaction, and, like, there's more pieces moving around. I think it is technically better constructed, but sometimes your heart just likes what it likes, and it's kind of like that Jeremy Clarkson meme with like, this is great, but I like this, and that's basically me in this book. I'm not insulting this book, though. I think it is really something I'd recommend if you're someone who wants some interesting character-driven magic, and it's not like with a more like soft magic system. So, oh yeah, and then I also read a book with my kids, Shipwreck at the Bottom of the World. It's about the Endurance. This one's by Jennifer Armstrong. Another nonfiction. I give this one 4.5 stars. I'll just throw that out there right away. It's a short book. This is the second book I've read about the Endurance. We also own another book about the Endurance, and I thought this one was good. I think the other book that we have by the Endurance is technically better, and apparently there's a third one by another guy that is like the one that people recommend. But this one was good. I don't have a ton to say about it, other than if you don't know about the Endurance, it was basically Ernest Shackleton in the early 1900s went on an expedition in Antarctica. He wanted to reach the South Pole, and he had this whole plan. It doesn't work out. And basically, their ship gets stuck in the ice and sinks, and then this is an incredible story of how they all survive. And what's amazing about the story is nobody dies. None of the people. You don't want to be a dog or a cat on this voyage, but none of the people die. And it's just a fantastic book. Like, it's an amazing story. Like, I think that this story can be better told in other books, I imagine, but, like, it's an amazing story. So just in general, read a book about the Endurance, especially because they had a photographer there. So there's pictures of this. It's absolutely incredible. Just 10/10 recommend, you know? Next, I did another audiobook. This one is The Comeback by Lily Chu. This one's a contemporary romance. I would call it a rom-com, straight up. Now, this one is about a lawyer named Ariadne, and she has a roommate. And one day when she goes home, her roommate isn't there, but instead this random, like, hot guy named Ji-hoon. She, like, gets ready to attack him with a knife because she's terrified. But it turns out Ji-hoon is just her roommate Hana's cousin. Her roommate's on a trip and offered Ji-hoon their place to stay because he's going through a bad breakup and he's kind of having a hard time. So that's the setup for this book. And it's basically, it's a love story between Ariadne and Ji-hoon. Now, this is a spoiler, but it's super obvious, but Ji-hoon is actually in a K-pop band. Like, he's actually a super famous K-pop artist. So that's, like, I feel bad spoiling it, but, like, it's super obvious. So if you don't, you know what I mean? Like, you're gonna figure that out. But here's the thing. This book is surprisingly good. I picked it up just because it was free on Audible, and I was like, a free romance, why not? This will be a nice little 3-star enjoyable thing. you know, whatever. But like, this is actually really good. This is good. Now, it's interesting. I went to the reviews for it, and it's actually not rated very high, which I think is disappointing considering that this is a very solid contemporary rom-com. Like, it's really solid. It's good. I can only guess that maybe it's reviewed a little bit lower because people like, maybe people who aren't into romance decided to listen to this. If you're not into romance, then I don't recommend it. But if you are into romance, this is honestly really solid. The characters are very mature and the communication is great. And this isn't to say there aren't communication issues. There definitely are. But it's addressed. And like Ariadne, she's a flawed character for sure. She has plenty of flaws, but she's very self-aware. She knows what her flaws are, and she fully acknowledges it several times in the book. And you can see her grow and trying, and she tries really hard to fight the things that she knows that she has problems with. It's great. And then Ji-hoon is just such a different kind of male protagonist. He's very like, he takes really good care of his skin and he likes to dress nice and he really you know, he's a little more, I guess you could say traditionally feminine. They're kind of like a role reversal there, but it's great. He's also really like in touch with his emotions and whatnot. I loved it. It was great. And like the connection between the two characters is fantastic. Like, you actually see these people really talking to each other and getting to know each other, experiencing things and communicating, and you can actually see them falling for each other. And I loved it. It was so good. This was a gem. I give it 4.5 stars. I highly recommend this if you have an Audible subscription and you like romance. If you don't, pass. Please don't read this if you're not into romance. I don't want to see more negative reviews where this book doesn't deserve it. It's like, yeah, like this is, I was really happy to find this book. It was good. The other thing to know is that this one is fade to black, so you don't get any explicit sex scenes. Depends on how you feel about that. I mean, I'm always for something spicy, but hey, I'm not going to discount a good romance just because of that, okay? I'm down. And then the last book I read this month was Voyage of the Damned by Frances White. Now, this was the Illumicrate book for January. I didn't get it until February because they're kind of, you know, essentially a month behind. But it's very pretty. Now, this one is a really cool concept. It is a fantasy book, but it's also a murder mystery. Because the concept is that they're in this country called Concordia, and there's 12 provinces, and the 12 provinces, in theory, all work together, and everything's all swell. And then they're supposed to go on this ship voyage to a sacred site together. I don't know exactly why, but that's basically what's going on in this book. And like the different provinces are represented by different animals and spirits, and these people, they're called blessed. They have like basically a magical power, and except for the blessed of the fish nation, he doesn't. And this is like a big secret because he should have a power. Anyway, you learn more and more as you go through about it, as you can guess. And that's the basic setup, is that suddenly people are getting murdered on this ship, and there's only so many possibilities of who could be, because it's whoever's on the ship, right? So, I love me a murder mystery. I don't like thriller mysteries as much. I will read them here and there. Like, I'll go out of my way every once in a while, have a craving, and I'll go for them. But like, I like more of a pure murder mystery. I love clues and getting all the clues and figuring out what it is, etc. I like that. Now, this one, it's not great. How to explain? So, interesting things about this book. First of all, stylistically, the way it is written, it's a fantasy world, like completely fantasy, but it's stylistically written very like in our own modern world. And like certain characters have certain accents that would be in our world. Like, one character has like what I think is supposed to be an American Southern accent, and the way they talk is very like contemporary to us. It's a little jarring. I got used to it over time. It's not bad. So anyway, that was a little jarring at first, but I got used to it. It wasn't terrible. This does have a younger feel to it. It doesn't have a YA feel, but like maybe new adult. I'm noticing a little bit of a pattern of that with the Illumicrate books at the moment, but as a whole, I enjoyed this. I didn't love it, but it was like, you know, I'm down for an occasional murder mystery, and it was fine. There were some interesting twists here and there. There's a couple. One of them I kind of liked, and then one of them I wasn't as into. And then how the mystery fit, I figured out about half of it, I'd say. I didn't figure out the whole thing, but about half. I gave it 3.5 stars. It was fine. I will probably keep this physical copy of this beautiful book, but it was fine, basically. That's it. That's what I read this month. Hoping to see you guys next month. I'm hoping to finish another book today. It's March 1st when I'm filming this. Probably won't have this up until next week though, realistically. So anyway, I hope you're all doing well. Bye.